really important question is, how do we get to those targets then? Where do they come from? Because everybody in year 10 will have a slightly different set of targets, because first of all, they're about you as an individual. What we've taken into account is your previous performance. We've looked at your best right back to the end of primary school and said from there we can work out your potential for the end of GCSE. So we've got a starting point, which is you. How well have you done previously? How can we help you to move forward? We've also looked at students and their performance nationally. So we look at you and your performance against students nationally, and how students of your ability make the progress that they do. And we put those two things together. And then there's another little bit in the mix, and that is something unique about Bishop Stopford School. You might not know this, I hope you do, but we're not an average school nationally. We are at least in the top 14%, may well be higher than that. So clearly we're not going to set you targets which are national average, because as a school we are not national average. So there's something about you, something about students nationally, and something about us as a school. And the reason that obviously that is excellent performance to put us in the top 14% is the work that students put in responding to those targets and the quality of the education you're getting. Your teachers day in, day out are performing very highly. So those things all come together to help us to set the targets. And we do use national ways of setting targets to help us to do that. If you look at a report, it will look very similar to the ones you got in lower school. You should be able to recognise it. Down the left there we have all the subjects, and you'll notice there with grades 9 to 1 at the top, there are just a couple of subjects, your core PE, and if you do IT, they have other grades and they're at the bottom. Across the top we have the criteria against which teachers are making judgments. Now 4 of those are very similar to lower school, but one is different. What you will notice on our top line is that we have 2 grades that you are going to be set based on your performance, based on what we know about the school and what students nationally like you achieve and have the potential to achieve. That target is a challenge for you. Okay, it's not where you are now, it's a challenge. But that is your baseline grade that we put in, and every teacher will be looking at your progress against that baseline grade. But what you'll notice as well, and in most cases it's +1, is there's an aspirational grade. And that's saying if you want to push yourself even further, and you really, the ceiling should not be your limit, what you should be doing is saying, I want to go higher. So there is also an aspirational grade. But your teachers will always be making the judgment against the baseline grade. So you have 2 grades there. The first one in itself is a challenge, and then there's an aspirational grade. And then in the final column is the column that your class teachers will be filling out. They will project a grade for you. And what they're saying there is this: not if you took GCSE now, what would you get? Because in most cases you're not going to be getting your target grade, because there's more to do, more content to cover, more for you to develop. So what they're saying is, if I take into account the way that you've been working over the past term, the quality of your work, the quality of assessments, and I put it all together, what would I project you're going to get the most likely grade at the end of the course? So that's where your teacher is making a judgment, and that's what your teachers are working on right now. You'll notice as well that we still have our class effort and homework effort columns. Those are really important, and your teachers are making those judgments. Remember, 5 is the best, down to 1. And what we're looking for in those columns are lots of 4s and 5s for there to be really good progress, because actually your effort will of course influence how close you're getting to that baseline and that aspirational grade. So when I look at reports, I look at those 2 columns first, because they tell me something about the way the teacher perceives you are working at this time. They're really important for you to think, am I putting in the appropriate amount of effort? Could I do some more? Let's just work that through. So on this report, the student, let's look at their geography. As you can see, they've been set a baseline target of a 6. And then their aspirational is +1, it's a 7. And if you look on the far side, the teacher is saying at this moment in time, based on the assessments, based on the attitude of this student, I think, amazingly, really good news, they're going to get their aspirational grade. But of course, there's a correlation. And what am I noticing over here? The effort is absolutely spot on. So this person's working really hard in geography, they're producing the goods, they're committed to it, and it's coming out in terms of that projected grade. If we look at the subject below though, you will notice there's something different going on. And in this case, the student is actually baseline targeted a higher target grade than they were in geography. And of course their aspirational is 1 grade higher. But at the moment the teacher's saying if I take everything into account, it's looking more like a 6. They're not even at their 7. And of course if we go back then to those first 2 columns, what am I noticing? Of course it's very different from the geography. What we've got is a student who's putting in a 3, just getting by in classroom effort, certainly not making the mark in homework, and there's then a relation. So the projected grade is about your academic potential, but how does the effort you're putting in now affect that? So that's how the report works. Teachers are completing right now the classwork effort and the homework effort and the projected grade, all measured against that baseline target. So just finally, what next? Well, when you get your report, of course, read it very closely. Read it in school with your form tutor, read it at home, because it is a really important document for telling you where you are now and the potential. I would say those targets go somewhere where you can see them, because sometimes when you're working in the detail of a subject, you can lose sight of the end and the big picture. On the front of your exercise book or inside the front cover, put your baseline and aspirational target for that subject. Always have it there in front of you so you know what you're aiming for, what your next challenge is. And the third thing to do is ask subject teachers if you're not sure about the report and the values that they've put in. If your effort grades don't seem to match with what you think, ask them about it. Get them to explain it to you. If your projection seems a little bit at odds with your baseline and you're thinking, I think I'm slightly better than that, have the conversation. That's the point of the report, and your subject teacher will expect you to do that. But remember, overall, your best is good enough. What we're aiming for with these results is very straightforward, that you fulfill your potential. You get to that highest level that you can. That will be different for everybody in year 10. And your personal best is good enough. If you're putting in that effort, if you are making that progress, what you do personally is good enough. Thank you.